Top 10 Best Futurama Episodes. Futurama. Such an amazing series that kept on getting cancelled despite the amazing content that it released upon the world. Even though I'm sad the series has finished, I'm glad that it ended when it did. It just seemed like the perfect time to end the series. It didn't get milked for every last drop like The Simpsons is. The series was incredibly strong right up to the end, and even though there were some weak episodes throughout the show, they don't stop the show from being absolutely amazing. Some of the episodes in this show, I mean, my god, this show could make you laugh and cry within seconds of each other. It was incredibly difficult not letting some of the episodes that I love onto this list, but I did somehow manage to not only narrow it down, but to put them in an order as well. Although, I have a feeling my opinions will keep changing, especially for the lower entries on this list. There were lots of episodes that I really wanted to put onto this list, but I just had to get rid of. I don't think that any episode this show ever released was bad. I just think that some of them were weaker than others. So, if one of your favourite episodes isn't on this list, then don't be shocked because the series was just so amazing. The seasons and the episodes for the show are really messed up, so I just followed what Wikipedia has said, which is the intended order. Sorry if they don't follow what you used to. The only real rule this time is that I won't be including the movies, but if I was, then Bender's Big Score would be in the top 3. I'm not sure where, but it would be in there. Anyway, let's get to the countdown. Number 10, 300 Big Boys. Everyone on Earth receives $300 after a tax rebate. The episode then has us follow the Planet Express crew members, each trying to find their own way to spend the money. While each story is separated from each other's, they do all connect in a well-crafted ending. Certain stories are better than others, but that's bound to happen. My favourite stories are Farnsworth and Zoidberg's, but they are my favourite characters, so that's probably why I like theirs the most. It's just really interesting seeing what each Planet Express member will do with the money. Fry buys 100 cups of coffee, Bender buys a toolkit to steal an expensive cigar, Scruffy gets a haircut, and Zoidberg does plenty without paying, until he eventually helps out some homeless people at the end. Since the episode switches between so many plots so much, it manages to be an extremely fast-paced episode, and has to get straight to the point, causing there to be very little, if any, filler. Jokes are very subjective, and everyone's taste in humour is different, so the fact that this episode has so many stories increases your chances of liking at least one of them. They do have to get straight to the point because of the limited amount of time they get with each character, and that means that most of the jokes are built into the story progressing, such as the way Farnsworth applies the stem cells to himself. It's just a very funny, very fast-paced episode, and it deserved a slot on this list, although it did barely make it on. That's how good Futurama is. Number 9, Teenage Mutant Leela's Hurdles. The Planet Express crew get made younger after trying to make the Professor younger with age-reducing tar. Unfortunately for the crew, Farnsworth tries to reverse the process and causes everyone except Leela to get more and more young as the episode goes on. Farnsworth is such an interesting character, and as the series went on, he just seemed to get better and better. The Professor could do nearly anything, and it would be interesting and comedic to watch. This is a Professor episode above anyone else. The first act in this episode is one of the funniest first acts in Futurama history. As the characters change ages, you actually see their personalities change too, but somehow they still seem like the characters we already know. Zoidberg constantly changes form, which was really fun to keep track of. This episode isn't anything mind-blowing with its story, but it nails the humour, especially with the Professor. It's a typical kind of Futurama episode, but it does what this show usually does really well with its comedic style amazingly. Number 8, Murder on the Planet Express. The Planet Express crew start having feuds with each other, but are forced to work together when a shapeshifter starts eating the crew members on the ship. This is just a really funny episode. I mean, you know there's no way they would actually kill off the main characters, and yes, the ending is extremely predictable, or at least I thought it was, but that doesn't matter. What matters is this episode is hilarious. The characters the writers picked to be feuding with each other actually make sense and don't come out of nowhere. Throughout the series, Amy is bitchy to Leela, Hermes does hate Zoidberg, and Bender is always an ass to Fry. The ending to this episode is perfect. It leaves the audience wondering if Fry or Bender will try to turn the other person into the police or not. The episode ends on that thought. Obviously they don't turn each other in, but the real question is, did they try? We just don't know. I think this episode works so well because it's one of the last episodes, and it kind of resolves the problems some of the characters had with each other throughout the series. This episode gave already really fleshed out characters even more development, and I really appreciate that. It isn't very emotional and it doesn't have the best plot, but it has amazing character interactions, and I recommend this one if you just want to see the characters be funny and play off each other really well. Number 7, Stench and Stenchability. I love Zoidberg, so him getting a great ending made me really happy. Zoidberg is constantly trying to find someone who will love him, but nobody can make it through the first date with him because of his smell. That is until he meets Marianne, a lady that works at a flower stall but has no sense of smell. He goes out with her for a while, but after she says she wants to be able to smell more than anything, Zoidberg has to decide whether he will perform the surgery and risk losing her to his smell, or not give her the surgery and not grant her dream. Zoidberg, being the amazing guy that he is, does the surgery for her, wanting to make her happy. And she actually likes how Zoidberg smells, because she's never had a good smell or a bad smell before, but she likes how he smells because she likes him. This is Zoidberg's ending in the series, and I'm so glad they gave him a happy ending after all the abuse he's had to put up with. No character, in my opinion, earned a happy ending more than Zoidberg. This episode is also kind of Bender's ending too, where he has this rivalry with this little girl who he eventually befriends. I don't think it's the best ending for Bender, but it made a lot of sense for his character. I still prefer Zoidberg's side of the episode, but Bender's definitely has the funniest moment. Him tap dancing on what he thought was the little girl's dead body was incredibly dark, but that's why it was so hilarious. Number 6, The Sting. Everything being a dream is usually a cheap cop-out, but this episode manages to build its story around everything being a dream. Fry gets killed by a giant space bee, and Leela keeps having nightmares of Fry, who keeps getting Leela to wake up. You know as soon as they kill Fry off that there's going to be some sort of twist in place to get him back. The ending being what the episode was all about all along. A dream. The real time she wakes up though, she's in a coma, and we find out that the bee sting went straight through Fry and gave Leela all the poison. The more times Leela wakes up, the more strange and scary her situation becomes. You can see her breaking more and more as the episode goes on, until she's finally woken up for real. This episode gives the viewer a great look into Leela's character. Seeing her lose her sanity was quite odd, as she's what I consider to be the strongest character on the show, and yet the writers found a way to break her without it seeming like it wasn't in her character. My favourite moment is the Be Happy song. It's funny, it's catchy, and it's disturbing. Funny and disturbing are probably the best words to describe this episode. Despite having plenty of funny moments, seeing Leela break was actually disturbing. This episode probably has the funniest Hermes moment too. Him saying, "You don't want to know," and then the professor says, and he responds with, "I didn't want to know," crying. It's just really funny. Number 5, Roswell That Ends Well. The Planet Express crew, other than Hermes and Amy, go back in time to Roswell 1947, where it's believed a spaceship crashed and an alien was found. Only according to this episode, the ship that crashed was the Planet Express ship, and the alien they found was Dr. Zoidberg. Meanwhile, Fry is trying to protect his grandfather from getting killed, but only puts him in more danger. Also, Bender is with them, but he surprisingly doesn't have that much to do. Farnsworth and Leela try to find a microwave, which they need in order to get back to their own time. Fry kills his grandfather and winds up becoming his own grandfather. The group end up rescuing Zoidberg and steal the military's microwave antenna before going back to their own present time. Lots happens in this episode, the most notable thing being Fry becoming his own grandfather, which is rather disturbing and disgusting to think about, but the episode managed to slap in a ton of humour with it too. Zoidberg is extremely funny in this episode and is the highlight. I especially love the scene where Zoidberg is given food to eat, but he says he doesn't have his wallet, but when he finds out that it's free, he just goes completely berserk with it. It's a very memorable episode, and Fry sleeping with his grandmother does get brought up again in a later episode, The Why of Fry. Number 4, Lethal Inspection. This episode is about Bender and Hermes, a very strange matchup that paid off very well. This was the first truly amazing episode that came from the series revival on Comedy Central, and definitely was not the last. Bender finds out that he's mortal and tries to track down the person responsible for him being defective. The person responsible for him being defective, of course, turns out to be Hermes, just because the writers like seeing the fans cry like babies. The way the episode hid the fact that Hermes was Inspector 5 was really well done, as you do question how he hid it from Bender, but they cleverly reveal that right at the end. The episode also shows how Bender deals with mortality, and unsurprisingly, he doesn't take the news very well, and it is sad seeing him break down crying. It does cause a happy moment too, as Bender says he likes Hermes but not Inspector 5 or other bureaucrats. I love when we see backstories for the characters, and we get a small piece of both Bender's and Hermes' past. Mom is also in the episode and sends killbots after Bender, leading to a pretty good chase scene. Mom, despite getting very little screen time in this episode, is still a highlight. Tress MacNeille is always great as Mom, and it might actually be my favourite role of hers. Every recurring or main voice actor in this show is amazing though. I've got to give credit to John DiMaggio, especially for his amazing breakdown moment as Bender in this episode. Number 3, the late Philip J. Fry. Fry goes forward in time with Bender and Farnsworth in a time machine that can only go forward, leaving Leela to go to hers and Fry's date on her own. On Leela's side of things, we get to see the Planet Express crew in the future without Fry, Bender and Farnsworth. The three guys keep travelling forwards in time, trying to find a time period where they have a time machine that can go backwards. This causes them to visit crazy time periods such as the year 1,500,000 where mankind is enslaved by a giraffe. The trio that are together are actually really great together, and I'm surprised they haven't had these three together more, but I think that makes this episode all the more special. Leela writes a message to Fry in the past after his birthday card to her falls out of the time machine, which, if you pause the episode at the right time, you can actually see an older Leela get hit with the card right at the beginning. I do find it a little hard to believe that out of all the things in an otherwise destroyed planet, that message remained, but that's a minor thing and I'm definitely looking way too into it. When the trio get to the year 1 billion, all life is extinct, and they give up all hope and get in the time machine one last time to see the universe end. But, shockingly, there's another big bang and everything starts again, and they get close to getting back to their own time before the professor slips and they go past it again. Luckily, they can just wait for the universe to end and then start again, which they do. Fry actually manages to get to Leela's birthday dinner right on time. Also, the trio crush their old selves with the time machine and Bender buries them on Fry's date with Leela. Number 2, the luck of the Fryrish. Fry gets sick and tired of all of his bad luck and tries to find his lucky 7-leaf clover from when he was in the past. He used to use the clover to beat his brother at certain activities, his brother being a character that always stole stuff from Fry. Fry can't find his clover and assumes that Yancey, his brother, must have stolen it. Farnsworth shows Fry a short film which reveals that his brother became famous while he was gone and also took Fry's name, something that Yancey said he wanted when his brother was born. They find where Fry's brother was buried in hopes of taking the clover back, only for Fry to come to the realization that it wasn't his brother buried but his nephew, and that his brother named his son after him because he missed him so much. The ending is extremely emotional and the way the story shifts from present to past was done brilliantly. This was the first true time we saw one of Fry's family members actually miss him. This episode, more than any other from what I can tell, seems to make it onto the most amount of people's lists for favourite episodes. Oh, and by the way, I'm sorry if I say the word emotion or emotional a lot. The show itself is just so perfect at balancing humour and emotion. This episode is probably the best at balancing great humour and emotion, but number 1 is on this list just because of how sad it was. If you've watched the whole series before, you probably know which episode I mean. Before I get to number 1 though, I'd just like to list some honourable mentions, and there's quite a few this time. Honourable mention, Amazon Women in the Mood. Zap crashes a restaurant containing himself, Leela, Amy and Kif into an Amazonian planet, and Fry and Bender try to rescue them. The males, other than Bender, since he's a robot, get sentenced to death by Snoo Snoo. Zap is a great character because of how terrible of a person he is, and he's probably at his most sexist in this episode. There's also a small subplot with Zoidberg trying to find a new shell, which is also really funny, but it doesn't get enough screen time to be anything meaningful. Honourable mention, Leela's Homeworld. In Leela's Homeworld, we get a very important reveal of what happened to Leela's parents and who they are. The ending is very heartwarming. Honourable mention, The Why of Fry. We get to see the return of the brains from a previous episode, and we get the reveal of the real reason Fry fell in the cryotube. The real reason was actually foreshadowed all the way back in the pilot. Honourable mention, The Tip of Zoidberg. I've already mentioned it a lot, but I love Farnsworth and Zoidberg, and we've always known that the two have had some sort of history in the past with each other. In this episode, we find out how they first met, and it makes for a really interesting episode. Honourable mention, Game of Tones. We get to see what happened with Fry's brother and in The Luck of the Fryrish, his dog in Jurassic Back, and his dad in Cold Warriors. And the only family member left for them to do without treading old ground was his mum, and they did the episode justice. Honourable mention, Meanwhile. A true final episode of the show, or at least it is as of the time this video is being made. Who knows, the show might end up coming back. The episode as a whole was really great for me, but it focused too much on Fry and Leela, and the other characters got pushed to the side. One of the reasons I love this show so much is because of all of the wacky, zany side characters it has. It was a great ending for Fry and Leela, and it was a great episode. I just wish we could have seen some more of the other characters. Number 1, Jurassic Back. Just wow. I have never seen an episode of anything. Hell, I haven't seen anything from TV or film that I found nearly as emotional as this soul-crushing episode. If you haven't seen the episode, you might want to watch it before I spoil it for you, because it will reduce the impact the episode will have on you. Fry finds a fossilized version of his dog from the past, Seymour. The professor discovers that there might be enough DNA in the fossilized version of his dog to make a clone of Seymour, but the more excited Fry gets, the more jealous Bender gets. Right before the dog is cloned, Bender in a fit of rage throws Seymour into lava, which completely breaks Fry. Bender, seeing Fry in such pain, dives into the lava to save Seymour, which he does despite almost dying himself in the process. Right before Farnsworth clones Seymour, his computer says that Seymour lived to 15. That's 12 years after Fry got frozen. This causes Fry to stop the cloning since his dog lived a whole life and moved on without him. We then get the final Seymour flashback of the episode, revealing that he waited for the rest of his life where Fry told him he would be returning. Jeez, this episode is so unbelievably emotional. It's so emotional that it's actually an episode that I haven't seen that much, just because it's so hard to sit through it sometimes. But the episode's aim was to be soul-crushingly sad, and it definitely managed that. It's good that the episode makes you understand Bender's views, even if I don't agree with his actions. Bender is really loyal to Fry, and in the end he puts his loyalty to the test, saving a fossilized version of Seymour, and he definitely redeems himself in the end. This episode was nominated for an Emmy, but somehow lost it to The Simpsons. I mean, I enjoyed Three Gays of the Condo, but it wasn't on another level like this episode is. That isn't a jab at The Simpsons episode though, but more of a gigantic compliment to how unbelievably amazing this episode is. Part of the reason I love Bender's big score so much is we actually get to see a bit more from Seymour. Seymour isn't just a plot device either, but he feels like a totally fleshed out character, even though this was his first episode. There are still some funny moments in this episode, such as Leela and Amy wrestling and some of the earlier moments in the episode. The main point of this episode isn't to be something hilarious though, and it really doesn't need to be. And if it was any funnier, I do sincerely think that it would drain some of the emotion away from it. If Futurama did come back, I don't even know if it would be possible for them to top this episode. I hope you all enjoyed this video, and be sure to write your favourite episodes in the comments section, as I'm always interested in seeing others' opinions on shows that I like. That's all for now, so see you next time.